Hello, my name is Houston, and this is Media Mood Board. That's right, my name is Houston, and this is Media Mood Board, a weekly show about hyper-specific entertainment lists. Mid-May, I took a trip to Japan for 2 weeks. A vlog will be coming for that soon, but because of that, the last video I made, we were not even really into summer yet. So in today's episode, I'd like to just do a little summer TBR, a list of things from different mediums that I'd like to get to this summer. Summer to me is about like light, page-turnery, entertainment, blockbustery things. So the first book that I was like very intentionally choosing for summer is the second entry into the Stormlight Archives, Brandon Sanderson's Words of Radiance. In a nutshell, at least as far as I know, part of the fun of the book is it's kind of constantly kind of shifting and changing what it even is. But in a nutshell, it's an epic fantasy adventure story about a kingdom on the precipice of a new era. Basically, on the edge of like recorded history, there was this group of knights that had magical abilities, and they fought off these huge, nightmarish creatures. For reasons that are lost to time, the knights abandoned humanity, and then the creatures kind of followed suit, and then soon after, the magic that was being used everywhere also kind of disappeared. The only remnants of that magic left in the world are coming from artifacts of this old history. Society transitioned into a new era. Instead of fighting against creatures for their land, they began fighting amongst each other over the land, and a fight over ownership of these magical relics that were left behind. But winds of change are in the air, or at least they seem to be. We follow a bunch of different characters across the strata of this world, but there are three main ones that the story kind of revolves around. The first book in the series doesn't really telegraph where we're going with the story. It gives you these disparate characters and then kind of slowly reveals where they fit within the macro plot. And that's part of the fun. Book 2, however, picks up right where the first book left off. And since we have a better grasp now of how these characters fit into the story, you can see a little bit more of, okay, maybe he's going here with this, and it allows you to play along a little bit more. And because a lot of the first book is kind of establishing the rules of the world, you're really just able to like go crazy in this one. I'm only 200 pages in, and there's already some wild fantasy which wasn't introduced until kind of really the end of the last book. Now, I've already started reading this one. This one is, I'm 200 pages in, if it gives you a sense of scale here for how big this thing is. And so I anticipate this one lasting me at least a month and a half. After I finish that, if I finish it this summer, I recently read, back in April, Parasol Against the Axe, which I really, really loved kind of the tone and style of. I read an interview with the author where she was listing like basically her 10 favorite books, like a listicle, basically. And one of her selections really stood out to me. It's this short literary spy novel that came out of France in the 70s that the author was this crime writer, but this was kind of regarded as his experimental book. It just sounded interesting, so I picked it up, and I loved it. So much so that after I finished it, I immediately rented another one of his books from the library to read, and I didn't love it as much as I did the first one, but I still really, really liked it. His name is Jean-Patrick Manchette, and as I was further researching him, I found out that he translated Watchmen in the French, and apparently it's really well-regarded translation, but also that he only wrote 11 major novels, and only 9 of those are translated in English. 9 feels like a really digestible amount of books to conceivably finish in a year. And I've never really finished someone's bibliography before. And the other 2 that I read were so short that I feel like I can do this. So I am going to try and finish his bibliography this year. And for the summer, my goal is to finish 3. So of his 9 novels, the 2 that I've already read are Fatale, which is the first one that I read that hooked me. It's about this professional killer who's finishing up a job and starting a new one. She arrives at this kind of close-knit, kind of backwater-ish town that has all these strange characters, and she kind of worms her way into the strange high society there. And part of the mystery is even figuring out as the reader, wait, who's her target? We don't know throughout it, so it's kind of this fun, like, okay, what's she up to? And then I read the only other one that was on ebook from my library, which was Skeletons in the Closet, a mystery for one of his recurring private eye characters. A woman shows up, a family member is missing, and the case leads our detective into this like secluded wellness cult. So the 7 left are the Angustro Affair, his first novel, which is this kind of first-person epistolary, whatever, about this undercover agent who kidnaps a foreign dignitary, ends up being a part in his killing, and then the main character is then killed off by his own government. It's supposed to be very political. It was based on current events of the time in Manchette's life. The Mad and the Bad is his second novel. It also won him a writing award for crime fiction. It's about this rich billionaire who has this like bratty nephew. The billionaire hires this woman out of a mental institution to babysit basically his bratty nephew. The billionaire also hires this kind of psychopathic serial killer to go after them both, and the story is kind of told from all the perspectives of the players involved. Nada is a story about a U.S. ambassador being kidnapped by a group of left-wing activists. No Room at the Morgue is his returning detective character's first case. The main character is this ex-cop who just got fired from the force for accidentally killing someone at a protest, and he's set up shop as a detective now, and this woman comes in, her hands are covered in blood. She says, I found my boyfriend's throat slit. I swear it wasn't me. You need to help me. And it turns into this real big weird affair. The next one that he wrote is 3 to Kill. It's a story about this kind of very conventional businessman who accidentally witnesses a murder, and then all the assassins that were doing the murder then turn their sights on him, and this big long chase ensues. The Prone Gunman is Manchette's final full novel that he was alive to completely finish. After he finished this, he took an extremely long hiatus from books, but this one appropriately is about a hitman who's trying to exit his industry to retire and is having a hard time doing it. There's actually a movie based off this starring Sean Penn, apparently. It didn't look like the reviews were that good for it, though. And then his last book is The Ivory Pearl, which was released 16 years after The Prone Gunman. Ivory Pearl is about this photojournalist in the wake of World War II, and was supposed to be a start of a new series where he was going to take each decade after World War II and kind of lead up to present, make a series of books. But he died while making this book. He basically finished the manuscript for it, and then people from his team went in and kind of filled in the blanks based on all of his notes. Most of the recommendations I've seen online recommend Fatale or Nada as the starting point. I've already read Fatale, so I'll probably read Nada next, then maybe 3 to Kill, then The Mad and the Bad. I'll play it by ear. Comic-wise, there was this Humble bundle a couple of weeks ago for the entirety of the BPRD series. The BPRD is a horror fantasy comic book about the BPRD, or the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, and it does exactly what its title says it does. It's a part of the Hellboy universe, and I'd read like 5 or 6 volumes of it a million years ago, and really liked it. I thought the story itself was actually, like, the macro story was stronger than Hellboy's, but I want to jump back into it. Now that I have the whole thing, I can just like rock it through, but I'll try to tick a few of those off this summer. Okay, this is going to be a much longer list, but I've got to be realistic here. This is the only one I'm 100% sure that I will finish this summer. Later this month, the Elden Ring DLC comes out. I loved Elden Ring, and I am very excited to play through this DLC and then consume hours and hours of content about it afterwards. Elden Ring is this epic fantasy action game about a continent where there's this godlike creature that rules, and he has selected different people around the continent to be his vassals and has granted them like godlike powers. They're essentially demigods. The game takes place during a power struggle where some of the vassals that he's selected have started warring against each other, and the god has been weakened, and other gods are kind of coming in trying to muscle in on his territory. And the big god has basically been like, hey, I'm calling in as many people as I can to try and come be one of my new vassals. And that's who your main character is. And the story unfolds, and you get to make a decision of who you want to side with, or what you think is right and wrong, etc., etc. So there's a lot of characters in this game, and some of them are gone into more detail than others. And basically what the DLC for this game is going to do a deep dive on one of the characters, or at least that's what the trailers and everything are pointing to, is a deep dive on one of these characters that we hear a lot about but never really get to meet. He is one of these demigod vassals. He's this brilliant sorcerer who has been cursed with eternal childhood. His whole thing is he likes helping downtrodden people, at least on the surface. He has built a society outside of the main kingdom where people who are ejected by society can come and live and thrive. His sister has been cursed by a god, and one of his big life missions was to find a way to remove that curse from her. There's also speculation within the community that this character kind of moonlights as a Robin Hood-like warrior. But I think we'll see a lot of these questions answered in the DLC, which will go into further depth on this character and potentially what happened to them and maybe who they really are. In these games, one fun thing is sometimes you'll hear about a character a bunch of times and it's hearsay or their mythology or it is just good PR. And then when you actually meet them, you're like, oh, they're not like this at all. Aside from that, I've decided this summer is mech summer for me. Mechs just feel summery, right? The two mech games that I have lined up for myself this summer are Xenogears and Metal Gear Solid 1. Xenogears is this role-playing game, came out in the late 90s, originally released on the PlayStation, and kind of a headline for it is the story of this game was pitched as Final Fantasy VII. The story was rejected, so they went and made it as Xenogears instead. The basic plot of this game is there is a religious war going on the continent, and they are using these ancient giant robots to help facilitate that war between each other, and you play a young man on the battlefield. The game's really well known for kind of being psychological. Jungian is something that I see a lot. It also has a lot of religious themes, so much that it almost didn't get localized because people thought it would be too controversial. The game is infamous for running out of budget, so it's a multi-disc game. The first disc is how you expect it. Then as the second disc goes on, it kind of moves from being a normal game into just cutscene after cutscene after cutscene because they ran out of budget. I'm really interested in playing it and seeing the story and seeing what it's all about. Plus, I've heard good things about Xenoblade Chronicles and things like that, and this is kind of part of that creator's oeuvre. So I think this will be a fun entry point. And then Metal Gear Solid 1. Metal Gear is maybe more mech related than it is mech centric, but it's a really well-known and well-respected series. I've played 2 and 3 on their original consoles back in the day, and I really liked them. Metal Gear Solid 4 is infamous for being very polarizingly strange, but is locked on the PlayStation 3 console, and emulation stuff for the PS3 is still not good. I recently went back to Texas to help my dad clean out his house, and I picked up my PS3 when I was there, and so now I do have that and a copy of Metal Gear Solid 4. So now that I have that, I want to try and make my way through the series, starting with 1, which I never played. The first one introduces our protagonist, Solid Snake, who's kind of this undercover agent, assassin character. He's on a special mission to take out this group of soldiers that have metaphysical powers who have gone rogue from the military and taken over this base, which houses a mech which can shoot nuclear weaponry. If that doesn't fill up all my time, there are 2 new games that are coming out that I'm interested in playing. Black Myth Wukong is this action-adventure game that is based on the Chinese story, The Journey to the West. It looks like there's just a bunch of cool character designs and an interesting world. This looks really fun to play. And then there's also a remake of the Myst game Riven, which comes out this year. I tried playing Myst when I was younger, and it kind of bounced off of it. But I heard on the podcast My Perfect Console, one of the guests was Ronan Farrow, and he was really talking up Riven as this immersive, huge, ambitious experiment in world building. And ever since I heard that, I wanted to play it. Happens to have a remake coming out this year. I'm sure those quality of life upgrades will make it an even more fun experience. So if I don't get to the other stuff, those are my 2 backup games. Coincidentally, all 3 of the retro games on my list were released around the same time. Riven was released in 1997, and the 2 artsy mech games, Xenogears and Metal Gear Solid 1, were both released in 1998. Okay, not a movie, but does continue the mech theme. I want to watch through the original Gundam series this summer. I watched the first episode and really enjoyed it, so I'm not just going in blind. And there's a companion podcast for the series that is really fun. I listened to the first episode of that. It gives a lot of historical context about it and things like that, which is just super, super fun to me. Plus, it was animated in like that 70s, 80s style, so it just looks really rad. I've also made a little summer movie night playlist type thing to try and work through over the course of the summer to watch with Rosie. It's a mix of comedy, popcorn movies, rom-coms, stuff like that. So on the list is the summertime classic Jaws, 2 screwball comedies, Barbra Streisand's What's Up Doc, and Elaine May's New Leaf, David Lean's aptly named Summertime, Eric Romer's equally summery The Green Ray, then 2 rom-coms, Fever Pitch and What a Way to Go, and then as we move into the fall, a sci-fi and a horror movie, Spielberg and Kubrick's AI, Artificial Intelligence, and then the micro-budget, Don't Let the River Beast Get You. It's raining now, can you see? This is a little bit more niche, but here are the plays or live theater that I'm hoping to see in summer. I'll go chronologically. High Noon is first. High Noon is this like Western thriller that's based on like 50s Western movies, but told from like an outsider perspective. It's a South African theater company and a Danish director. And apparently they build the set in real time as the play goes on, like they're putting up the saloon and things like that. Ambitious stagecraft is just like so fun to me. And plus I've never seen like a Western on stage, and a Western thriller sounds really fun. On Beckett is actor and clown Bill Irwin's one-man show going through the bibliography of Samuel Beckett. Ambitious one-person shows I'm always excited for. Especially when they involve physicality, like something like clowning. So yes, I'm very excited for this. And then at the end of the summer, I am going to go see Oh Mary again, this time on Broadway. I was able to see Colascola's Looney Tunes Tour of Force on the off-Broadway stage, and so I'm really excited to see how the whole team has adapted this for Broadway. And even if there's no changes at all, I'm just super excited to be able to see this again. Is there anything you're looking forward to reading, watching, whatever, this summer? If you liked what you saw here, you can follow Media Moodboard on Letterboxd or Goodreads or just here on YouTube. I'll be back again next week with another hyper-specific entertainment list. My name is Houston. This is Media Moodboard. Bye.